Good morning. I am Kristen Kazarian, the editor-in-chief at Powder and Bulk Solids. Some of you might have known Kevin Cronin. He was the editor-in-chief of Powder and Bulk Solids magazine and brand for 36 years. So he finally decided to hang up his cloak, if you will, and just continue to be the rock star social media guy. If you want to look him up, Kickball Dad, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. I use TikTok. Hilarious. You're not gonna regret it. So here we are. We're gonna make some introductions.
I'll just
Introduce yourself.
Hi guys. Sorry. I'm Roth. I work for Harrington Group. We're a fire protection engineering firm. My degree is in chemical engineering, so I work in the industrial process safety group. And the reason we're here, we do combustible dust hazard analysis, property loss control, that kind of thing.
My name is Jorie Kassel. I'm the laboratory division manager for Particle Technology Labs, which is a third-party contract laboratory specializing in particle characterization. We service a lot of industries such as pharmaceuticals, aerospace, food and cosmetics, and industrial processing. It's been a great experience to contribute to this show.
Hi, my name is Snehal Prabhu, and I am a principal scientist working in the R&D group at Clorox. I am a food scientist, so I work in the foods group in Clorox, working on Hidden Valley Ranch, and this is my first time at the show. So I use a lot of instruments, like, a lot of familiar faces, but have never seen like such big machinery on the show platform. So really excited to be here.
Great. Okay, let's kick it off with question one. Why did you choose the profession you're in? Yeah, we're switching. Periodically, whoever wants to go first.
I'm not always going to go first, but I guess I'm going first again. So, like I said, my degree is in chemical engineering. I went to University of Michigan, so go blue. Have to say that. That's part of graduating. I chose chemical engineering. I liked chemistry, physics, and math, and that's a nice hybrid of all of those things. And then going through school, I just was trying to survive, make it through Michigan to Harrington University. When I got out of school, I got picked up by a consulting firm, a really small consulting firm, specializing in chemical and mechanical process system design, which was inadvertently a really good fit. I just needed a job, but landed in consulting and absolutely loved it. Jumping from project to project, working for different clients. I've worked for like the largest chemical manufacturing companies in the world, doing process design, which was exciting, work in the consulting world. Somewhere along the line, a client came to us and said, we need a combustible dust hazard analysis. I think I was a year or two out, and I'd heard of combustible dust in school. I'd heard of solids handling, and I was like, sure, let's give it a go. And I remember being 23 years old, sitting in my first dust hazard analysis meeting, and they're like, this is Roth, she's our combustible dust expert. And I was like, oh, okay, we're here, but it was a nice drive to really, if you're getting introduced as the expert, I hope you know what you're doing. I was not the expert at the time. It was more of a comical thing, but delving into all the codes and standards and getting to know them, and I became the combustible dust person at the company I worked for at the time, and developed that group and made it somewhat of a name for myself. And then I was still doing process design and looking to get more involved in the combustible dust world, hazardous materials. And got reached out by a recruiter to work for the company I work for now. So I've been with Harrington Group for I think about a year and a half now. It's cool because now I work with the best of the best in the industry. We've got people that sit on NFPA committees, which I didn't even know was a thing. Like, it was kind of this untouchable, like, oh, you can sit on an NFPA technical committee, and now I get to be on one too. So, kind of how I got to where I am today. It's been a fun ride.
I did not choose this profession, it chose me. When I initially was in school, I studied biology and wanted to study parasitic wasps, which is very different from where I am today. After school, I also explored a little bit about veterinary medicine, and then ended up making a career change to working at Particle Tech. So I've been there for 18 years, and it provided me with an environment that was constantly changing and something that I just had something new to learn all the time. I started out in dynamic light scattering, which is kind of a hard technique to start out on because it's all using submicron material, which you can't visually see. So that set me up with a lot of challenges right off the bat. And then as I went and I progressed, I started learning laser diffraction techniques. I took over as a team leader as the company was growing. We initially only had 7 chemists, and now we have over 20. And I just gradually kept gaining departments. So I now oversee laser diffraction, which I feel is my specialty, but also our count scope department, which has image analysis in it, and Coulter techniques, and some of our other counters. And then we also have been trending with Raman and nanospeciation technologies. So I now somehow have found myself juggling all of those, and it's been really exciting, and I'm really glad at the way that the trajectory of my career has happened, seemingly almost random at times, but it's been really great. That's how I got here.
My story kind of similar to yours. Like when I grew up in India, so I knew I wanted to do something in science because that's what I like. And at the time, the career options available to me were so few. Like either I could become a doctor or an engineer. And I liked biology more than math, a little bit more. So I thought, okay, I'll become a doctor. But unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be. And I'm so happy that today I am not in the medical profession. And when that path seemed like it was closing on me, I was like a little bit disappointed. And one of my professors suggested, do you want to study food science? And I was like, what is food science? And even now, like when I introduce myself as a food scientist, people are surprised because people do not know what food science is, and people think that it is like, are you a chef? But in food science, we don't learn how to cook things or develop recipes, but we do learn to formulate. So it's a lot of studying about food chemistry, then processing, so a lot of engineering subjects that we take. You learn about food microbiology, it helps with preservation of food. So I thought it was an interesting field, and I'm glad that I kind of took my professor's advice and studied undergrad in food science in India. Then I worked for about 5 years at General Mills, Unilever's there, worked in product development, R&D, moved to this country, and then did my grad school at UC Davis. So if anybody is interested in food science, UC Davis has an amazing program. And currently I work at Clorox. Clorox is, you all know, is a cleaning company. But we have a foods business unit, and we work on Hidden Valley Ranch dressing. So I have been at Clorox 9 years now, and initially I worked on the bottled side of the business, but now since 5 years I've been working on ranch seasoning. So if you have not had it, I would highly recommend using ranch seasoning to cook with, to make a fresh dressing. And because I worked on ranch dressing, I think I got involved with powder processing, and I'm very happy that I get to meet so many people here and make new connections to this profession.
Perfect, thank you. So Jorie, let's start with you. What is it like being a leader in your industry?
I feel like what is very, I am in a very niche industry. Particle characterization is not something that everyone in here is familiar with it, and that we need it for the products that are being made. But I have a very interesting perspective on it because I get to be in an environment where I have so many techniques that I have access to, which I think is very unheard of. And most companies have maybe a couple techniques in-house, a couple instruments, but I've been able to basically see a wide variety of them, and in being able to understand them and having so many diverse clients, I have a perspective on what everyone is doing in a way that I would say is, I guess very unique. So to have that chance to do that and be a leader and talk to people and share the knowledge that I have that is not well known is a great opportunity and feels very, I guess, special. And what it's taught me is that I do have to learn a lot technically, but I also have to learn a lot about human dynamics because I have to work with such a diverse group of people. So it's been an incredible learning opportunity for me.
What about you?
This was a hard question for me because I was like, is it leader in me as a leader in the industry or like the company Clorox as a leader in the industry? So I was thinking of it both ways. And I think making strong connections within the group that you're working in, and also like, having strong connection with the partners. Like, I work with a lot of raw material suppliers. So like, understanding what their capabilities are, what their strengths are, and similarly, like, giving them a peek inside, like, what Clorox is, like, what the strengths are and what opportunity areas we have. Like, it forms like a good partnership to learn and lean on each other. And another thing is knowledge and data management is also crucial. I have realized, like, I work on so many projects, and sometimes if you are not thorough about like keeping track of what you have worked on, that data just goes missing. And like in the future, somebody is going to work on the same project not knowing that I already worked on it. So I think building relationship and having like a good place to store data and make it accessible to everybody, I think makes you a leader in the industry.
Makes sense.
So regarding, I guess, leadership in my industry, so I'm in the combustible dust and process safety industry as a whole. And kind of like Jorie said, I didn't realize that not everybody was as passionate about combustible dust safety as I was. I had a client call me a dust nerd. I was like, oh, I guess this is a very nerdy topic. But being in process safety and leading projects, leading teams that I've led before, there's a big weight to it that sometimes doesn't hit you. I mean, we try to bring ourselves down to earth and remember the consequences of what can happen if things go wrong. But it's fun sitting in a room and having the power to make decisions, but also like you're making recommendations. They have to follow them. I mean, to an extent, they don't always follow them, but the consequences of not doing what we say can be catastrophic. So carrying the weight of that, it doesn't get to me on a day-to-day basis. People remind me about it, or anytime there's an incident, you have to be reminded about it. But people listen to you, which is interesting sometimes. You have a lot of power to it, but also it's people's lives can be on the line. So I just have to remind myself of that, working in the safety industry.
What are some of the most important skills that you've learned in a leadership position or in your position?
I'll start. I can start again. I think the big one for being in a leadership position, the company I worked at prior, I managed 6 people, and now I am on a team where we are more collaborative, and I don't technically manage anybody directly, which is a different take. But when I was in charge of managing people, I mostly had new grads, which is fun. New grads takes a lot of patience. Because you're trying to get, the whole goal with hiring anybody is trying to get them up to speed as quickly as possible, so they can be useful and help you on projects, and you're getting whatever new grad right off the bat. So patience was, I'm a very type A, go-getter, driver type person. You have to take a step back and be like, this person needs a little more hand-holding. And it's always worth it when, you see the gears turning and the lights finally click on. But patience was always the biggest thing that I needed to remind myself. It's like, hey, this person, yes, they went through 4 years of engineering school, but they don't know anything yet, so you have to help them through that process.
I think one of the most important skills I've learned how to communicate technically in layman's terms, because I've realized that a lot of people don't have the excitement and understanding of particle size as I do. So that's been an exciting challenge for me. Doing presentations has definitely helped me practice that, and I've been grateful to have, as I mentioned, so many different clients. And I think the other thing that I have learned along the way is being able to harness intuition and observation about somebody, or teams, I should say. So I oversee 15 people, and as you go into management, you don't have the ability, or you lose the ability to keep learning at a technical level. So you're basically relying on the people that you're training and building a team to fulfill that translation. So being able to recognize on my team their strengths and utilizing them in a way has been a skill that I've developed over the time, and I've really also enjoyed doing that. It's really been great to see my teams grow and provide information that satisfies our clients' needs.
Yeah, one of the things that I have developed and I'm still working on it is when newer scientists come to the group, like they come to me with a problem and my instant reaction is to like provide a solution. But I have realized that if I answer like, maybe not a process question, but if it is a true problem which I think they have the capability of solving themselves, like how do I hold back and kind of follow it up with another question which would get them to the answer, maybe not as quickly as me giving them the solution, but for them to think about it and then come with that on their own. It's been a struggle, but I think I'm kind of working on it, how do I pause and let them take the lead.
Good answers. Next question, was finding a mentor part of your career journey? And if so, how did it impact you?
I can take this one. So I actually had a very negative experience with a mentor in my second job right after school. And I was very naive at the time, and I think that I stayed too long in a situation that wasn't good for me. And so what I learned in that situation is you have to advocate for yourself, so it started my journey on that. And it also taught me, if in the future, if I start mentoring people, what do I want to be for them, and what do I not want to be for them? So for me, I took away that message in growing my teams. And yeah, it was a painful situation, but I think going forward, it helped me realize that you don't necessarily, in my opinion, you don't need a mentor. You need to look at the people in your environment and the people that are that you interact with every day, because everybody in your environment will provide you with something that you can try to achieve. Everyone has a characteristic that you might want to go for. So paying attention to the people who you work with on a daily basis, I think for me, is more important than just having a mentor itself.
Actually, I agree with you, Jorie. It is important to having a mentor. What I was going to say is, who your mentor is also very important. For me, I'm a very direct person, and I have looked for people who are very honest and open and direct to me, rather than sugarcoating things and telling me stuff. And I want to be able to be my authentic self in front of my mentor. And that was the advice I was going to give as well, that a mentor doesn't have to be somebody in your organization. It could be a friend that you went to school with, or somebody you have I work with so many suppliers, so do you form relationships outside of your company and work with them? So I think it is important to have a mentor if that's what you want to, because that is helpful, because they can be your cheerleader. They can provide you constructive criticism and also give a different, perspective of doing things. But yes, I would definitely recommend advocating for yourself. Yes.
So I've got two answers to this. Sorry, it's gonna be a little longer. I'll try to make it brief. Thanks for bringing up people outside your organization. So I had the privilege, good and bad, of my mom's an engineer too. So there's always talks about women in engineering. Me growing up, women in engineering was my home life. That's just what I grew up with. So it was a very normal thing. And my mom, like myself, very type A career woman. She works in the aerospace industry. So from a career mentorship perspective, I got to see where she started, working at various places, switching jobs, taking different positions, and getting to see that firsthand. So when I entered the engineering field, I would spitball ideas with her just kind of off the cuff. She had no vested interest other than I was her daughter. It's not like I was directly working for her. But then I had a good opportunity with the companies I've worked for, where I found somebody or multiple people to bounce ideas off of. The first job I ever had, there was the guys that ran the company, a couple of them took me under their wing and saw that I had potential and just invested their time in me. Sitting at a conference room table, rolling up their sleeves and just doing HVAC design or whatever we were doing. And we'd be there till midnight working on projects, and you have side conversations while you're working on these things. So I always appreciate the time they invested in me. that story I told earlier about sitting in a conference room for my first dust hazard analysis, it was because the guy that was mentoring me, he was eventually going to retire, so he knew he couldn't run it. But he was like, no, you did the report, you run the meeting. So I just got thrown into it. It was, getting pushed by a mentor to be like, oh, you can do it, you got it, see how this goes. And you fumble, and he kind of was sitting next to me in case I completely dropped the ball, but it didn't happen. He knew that I could handle it. And then at the company I'm at now, I feel like we've got a lot of people with really good technical experience where I can see people, 5 years, 10 years down the road from where I'm at, where I can go to just about anybody and bounce ideas off of, both for professional development or just projects we're working on. So that's cool. And then also, not technical related, but just work-life stuff. We all work remote, but the first day at the company I work at now, a female senior engineer, we had like these one-on-one calls with everybody, and she knew I had young kids, so I got a 2-year-old and a 9-week-old now. But I just had he was 7 months at the time, but she told me, she's like, don't be afraid to block off time in your calendar if you want to like go to a preschool event, or you want to do something. She's like, we're work remote, you are a professional, you know how to get your work done, you're allowed to be with your kids too. That's kind of how we do it at this company. So that was a really cool thing, but that's just the company I work at. We're all just very collaborative minded like that.
What is the best career advice you have ever received?
Maybe I
Start
can,
with-
yeah.
yeah.
Actually, this is a fun one. I still follow it. It was like several years back, my first job right out of school. And I was like, so nervous. It was my first day, and I thought I studied so many things in school and I need to know everything. And the first thing my manager told me was, Snehal, you need to learn to say, I don't know a lot, so that way you can learn. And when he said that, I was like, really? Like, I don't know, sounds like a pretty negative thing. And I have observed even now, like there are many people, when I talk to them, I know that they don't know, but they would hesitate to say, I don't know. But I think it is very empowering to say I don't know, because then you open this whole new opportunity to learn something. So that's the advice like I live by, and if somebody asks me, I give them the same advice.
I think I got really simple advice too that I also carry with me, and it really is, you don't know what you can do until you do it. I feel like I can really get myself spun up if I have to try something new, being like, well, am I gonna be good for it? Am I gonna be able to succeed? I don't know if I wanna do it if I'm not gonna be good at it. And realistically, just do it and just see where you can go with it. And you might be surprised, maybe you won't be an expert at something, but you will learn a lot even just by trying. So I feel like that's what I've lived by for a long time.
This one is probably just because my mom sits in the back of my brain a lot. She always said know your worth, which can both mean like compensation-wise monetarily, but also if you're in a crappy situation, you probably don't deserve to be in a crappy situation. Know that you're worth more than sitting in a crappy situation with work or whatever. So that's always stuck with me. It's not just a compensation thing. It's if you don't feel like you're being treated well, know your worth. You can go do something else and be happier.
Absolutely. Next question. If you could do one thing different in your career, what would it be?
I'm just gonna like piggyback off my last answer. I think the only, there's not a lot of regrets in my career so far. The only thing that I could think of is staying in a situation that you didn't like. Getting to the point where you're about ready to flip the apple cart is not a way to operate. It bleeds into every part of your life, and I think taking a step back and looking at what I actually want and leaving a position that I knew I didn't like anymore sooner was probably the only thing I regret. But I didn't stay there very long. It wasn't that bad, but your mental health is worth a lot more than what we give it credit for.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that too. I feel like I have no regrets in my career. I've loved how things have turned out for me so far. Excited for where I'm gonna go. But I think that I wish I would have understood what imposter syndrome is way earlier in my career, and being able to gather the tools to navigate that. Because I think what I see now as a manager is that it's a very common thing, but no one really talks about it, and you kind of just pretend like you don't feel it, but a lot of people do. And I wish that I had had those tools earlier to be able to convey that information to the people that I'm working with.
Yeah, for me, yeah, I don't regret anything, but if there is one thing I would change is being able to advocate for myself early on. I think it goes back to I grew up in India and it's more cultural, not to brag about yourself or let the work speak for itself and not to talk about you, but I realize that at work, if I do not, it's not like bragging about the work that I'm doing, but kind of sharing the work that I'm doing with all the colleagues so they can learn from it or build on it. So having that different perspective, like bragging versus talking about what you're doing, I learned that I think a little bit later on. So if anybody here is starting their career, I would highly recommend that you be your own advocate and speak for yourself.
Next question.
Have you seen any new trends, maybe this year, in your respective industries? Anything related to particle stuff?
I feel like what we're seeing more of is multi-component materials. So, for example, pharmaceuticals, we're seeing a lot of products that have different drugs, and that's been really challenging for us because our clients want to know the particle size of all of them individually and the quantity. And we've had to be really creative in stepping away from simpler techniques like laser diffraction, going into image analysis where we can apply different filters to the images to try to detect differences between crystalline material, or sometimes we have mixtures of catalysts with different other components, and using a lot of Raman to kind of look at that as well. So this has been, it seems like the materials and drugs are getting more complicated, and so thus we have to follow in that way as well.
2 letters, AI. I feel like that's that big one. We were talking about this yesterday. It's for us, it's biomass, hydrogen, and then AI, which it's figuring out how you can make it useful for you, but also limitations of it. But the last company I worked for, they were introducing some AI, and I worked for a company where they did a lot of MEP building design, so things that aren't confidential, nothing really exciting about it, just office building. But we did a lot of the process stuff, which is highly confidential. We do not want that chemistry getting out. We do not own that chemistry. So we were always freaking out about, we can't enter this in AI, it's confidential information. We can't just give this to the ether that is AI, we don't know what's gonna happen. So getting familiar with AI, it can be a useful tool. People are proving that every day, and understanding how we can use it and how we're allowed to use it. Because if you don't figure out how to use it, you're gonna get behind at some point.
Absolutely.
I work in the food industry, so the major trends are flavors, and Hidden Valley Ranch, is a very fun brand, and we like to introduce a lot of new flavors. And right now, I think global fusion flavors are a huge trend. And yeah, every year we get to innovate on different flavors. I cannot tell you what flavors we are working on currently, but there is a whole bunch of exciting flavors coming out. Now, there is honey barbecue, then there is blue cheese. Blue cheese not a trendy flavor, but it is coming back. Flavors from Applebee's menu in the 90s, they are coming back.
That's good to know. So how important is networking to all of you?
I feel like I don't like that term because I feel like it sounds like forced socialization. So the way I look at it, me being somewhat of an introvert, is that I just kind of like to go off of the previous answer. I said that it's so important to get to know people in your environment. You never know who you're going to meet and what you might share with them, or what they can bring, what you can bring to each other. So for me, I don't like thinking about it as a task. I just am going to go do it because you'll get a lot of surprises.
That is so true. I'm an introvert, so if you label something networking, I would usually go to somebody I know rather than go to a new person and introduce myself. So I actually like for that to happen organically, like you said, rather than be it forced. And I think all of us network every day with a new person, like cross-functionally in the company, or with suppliers, or with instrument folks. So yeah, I like for the process to be organic more than forced.
So I work in consulting, so the only reason I get paid is because I have to socialize and network and get more clients in the door. That's not the only reason, but it's a big part of how we're operating in the company. The term networking, I feel like eventually would get replaced with like, you know, socialization or something that's less formal. But the way I always look at it is, I mean, just probably because I've been in consulting my entire career, I genuinely enjoy working on the projects I work on, and I genuinely think I'm the most, like, the best fit for, well, not the best fit for everything, but like, if I know your project and I'm learning about your project and I think I can help, like, I want to get in there and help you. Like, so learning about what people are doing, learning about their processes, their pain points, you know, we've got a booth talking to people about what they've got going on. I genuinely want to help, so that's how I always look at it. I did a training one time where the guy it was some selling training, I don't know. But he was like, your clients like you. Like, your clients, they keep hiring you because they like you as a person, like, don't forget that. So I just remind myself of that, but I genuinely enjoy doing projects, and you gotta talk to people about their projects to get in the door that way.
Good answers. Next, what advice do you have for anybody starting their career journey in your profession, outside of your profession, doesn't matter?
I think from my, like, you know, what I said, what I learned, like, obviously advocating for yourself is very important, and believing in yourself, and not necessarily finding a mentor, but like kind of connecting with somebody who has been in a similar situation as you, so you can learn from them. And I'm not saying mirror their career path, but at least, like, you know, get guidance from them on what worked, what didn't work, so like, you know, you're set up for success.
I would say it's really important, of course, to go and seek out opportunities in your career. You know, go to the trade shows, go to give presentations, that kind of stuff. But don't forget to try things outside of the career, because they will bring skills that I think that will still apply in the direction you want to go. I would say I'm going to advocate for everyone to join some kind of team sport, which I know sounds really strange, but as an example for myself, I joined a roller derby league, and I've never played team sports before, and can say that I learned a lot about communicating. I learned a lot about bruised ego, and I learned a lot of skills that I could then bring to my team, because now I realize in that sport you have to really communicate to get to your goal. And so now I've taken some things, but it doesn't have to be that particular sport, but look outside of what your career path is, because again, you never know what you're going to find, and it might translate pretty well.
I had the privilege of always having new grads under my belt, at least in the previous role I had, but I always told them, especially coming out of engineering school, going to the engineering school I went to, our tagline's leaders and best. We think we're the best at everything. Coming out of engineering school, you have a tool chest for how to be an engineer, and hopefully some of the mindset of how to think like an engineer, but you don't know anything. So I always told my new grads in the first couple weeks, because you give them a task and you can kind of see they're frazzled sometimes. And I just remind them, like, oh, I don't expect you to know anything. I expect you to have the drive to go figure it out, or do your best and then tell me what you learned, and I'll kind of help bridge that gap. But it was always a fun sigh of relief to see on their face when I'm like, no, you're a new grad, you don't know anything. I have to teach you a lot of things and break some of the molds of school. School gives you the theoretical fundamentals, but we're engineers, so we don't always use the theoretical things.
Okay, well, that's our panel for today. This is a Q&A session now. Anybody have any questions? Feel free to ask.
Eric. I don't know if I really want to jump. Let's see if that works.
Good morning. Thanks for all your helpful info. Eric Maynard, Jennifer Johansson. Great job so far. My question is around promulgation of our industry. And I do a lot of STEM outreach to high schools and to university, talking about powders, bulk solids, combustible dust. And what advice could you give our group on how to get new engineers, kids in high school, into our field? What would really land on them to draw them into this field? Something about your passion for what you're doing, and how can we get others into this industry? Thank you.
I would say for chemical engineering, because chemical engineering is a kind of a little bit of a abstract thing. It's hard to put like concrete, what is chemical engineering types of things you do. And traditional chemical engineering is like your oil and gas, ammonia production. With bulk solids, I try to translate it to like food. So like food manufacturing, people know flour, sugar, making cakes, making consumer products. Chemical engineering bleeds into like making shampoos, like all these. Like you go to a store and the bottles on the shelf, there's a chemical engineer behind it in some capacity with the processing part of it. I didn't get into, I didn't go into chemical engineering to get to where I am today. It kind of happened that way. But looking back, the cool stuff, at least what I do, watching explosions is fun and sexy to see, like, big thing blow up. And obviously we're trying to prevent them from happening, but seeing like big flashy stuff's fun. But that was kind of happenstance. But the way to bring it back to people that don't work in the industry necessarily is like, hey, it's food manufacturing. It's how do you make, like, you can make a cake at your house. How do you make 10,000 of them? You do that on an industrial scale with all the cool process equipment they've got out on the show floor. So that's how I always bring it back to people. Also, it helps explain it to like the non-engineering technical folks, or non-engineering folks in those technical departments. Like, I mentor some people for senior design class at University of Michigan, and there's like the administrative people. They're like, how do we explain chemical engineering to new students that are coming up and want to know what it is? It's like, well, how do you make 10,000 cakes? Like you go to the grocery store, how do you make shampoo on an industrial scale? So bringing it back that way, I've seen it helps pretty well.
I guess I would say the experience that I've had, our PTL has been starting to offer internships. We work with North Central College, and we have a couple of professors that we work with, and engaging students and having them come for a tour has been a really great opportunity to foster and explain how particle size, for instance, really plays a role. Very similar to mentioning like how do you make cakes and what is the process involved. And I feel like giving people the opportunity to be hands-on with something that's tangible and realistic, although in concept seems very far away, has been a way to engage and to show students, I guess, a whole side of science that they might not have realized.
I think another thing to add, like everything what Ali and Jorie said, recently we had a webinar on Way Up, and we walked the freshmen, sophomore, and juniors from different schools throughout the country on what a life of a chemical engineer looks like at Clorox. So I think that kind of gives them tangible examples of what you learned in school and how you can apply it at work.
Okay, great. Next question.
Yeah, hi. I had a question about the left two panelists. I won't try to pronounce your name, sorry. How do you create a safe environment for your new team to be able to say, I don't know, or take that leap and you don't know what you can do until you do it? That leads also to failure. And so how do you create a safe environment for them to be able to say, I actually don't know that, or deal with the fact that they could fail at something?
So at Clorox, we have a very good onboarding program, and I lead by example. If I don't say I don't know in front of people, or if I don't share the mistakes that I have done, I don't see the people having the confidence to come to me and own up to I did this mistake, or I don't know how to work on this. I guess leading by example is what I feel make new scientists or new engineers comfortable to work with you, and how open you are, right? And I always think about, I have a daughter who's 16 years old, when she comes up with a problem and just the reaction I show to what she's saying sometimes kind of makes her not be open to me sometimes, because I'm why did you do that? So I guess how I react and create a welcoming environment to younger scientists in the group makes them comfortable. I'm not sure if I'm answering, but I guess by role modeling and making them feel comfortable.
Jorie?
I would say, I agree with the leading by example, for sure. I also think that when somebody fails or when somebody doesn't know an answer, you kind of work with them to investigate together. So I think knowing that they have support, if they don't know something or if they have to troubleshoot, makes it a less scary experience to fail. Knowing that you just have to just think about it in a different way, perhaps, or have a different perspective. So I think that's worked for me with my teams. I have most of our new grads that show up at our facility have no particle experience, and like many of the other things that have been mentioned, you know, people come with expectations like you're supposed to know everything. You know, I'm supposed to know all these chemical formulas I learned, like, you know, in the second level of chemistry, which is unrealistic. But basically showing in real time that all we're doing at our jobs, and most jobs, is active troubleshooting, and there's a process for that, and it's not a scary thing.
Absolutely, good answers. Anybody else? Any more questions? Great.
I have two daughters that are college age, one that just graduated. And my first thought for all four of you really is, you know, you must have been in a conference room full of men. And that's kind of, you know, you're the only female amongst those men. What advice would you give to them about commanding respect in that room? Because it can be difficult, I imagine. So.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I had the privilege of my mom was an engineer, and coming up after that, I heard stories from her back in the 70s or whatever it was, where she started going by her initials. So her name's Barbara Jean, and she started going by her initials because that's how she got in the door. Like, they would see Barbara and they would throw the resume in the other way. And she worked in the aerospace industry with the ratio is a little bit different than it is today, but what I learned from her was how to just command presence, but also you deserve to be there, and I feel like the environment's changing a little bit. The first company I worked for, it was 30-person company, of which there were 3 female engineers. So you have to have confidence in those situations, which it's a little bit of a personality thing. But I just walked into a room like, hey, I went through 4 years of engineering school. I got the job. Like, not imposter syndrome. Like, you want to be a little bit humble to have that eagerness to learn, but it's also like, hey, they hired you for a reason. You deserve to be there, and then you slowly start gaining confidence that way. But it's, you know, that balance of being confident but being humble enough to learn and being eager to learn. And when you're eager to learn, especially as a new grad or coming in, people pick up on that and they want to invest that time into you because you're showing them that you're willing to put in the work. So, you know, it's work hard, do all the things that make you a good, well-rounded career person. But it's like they hired you for a reason, so you have to remind yourself of that.
I think in my experience, I've been pretty lucky. I feel like I haven't had many experiences in a situation where I felt unsure of myself in a setting, because most of the people in my company are very open-minded, and we have probably more women scientists than men. As I progressed, I had one instance that I share with my team where I was producing data as a chemist for a company, and the guy that I was giving data for didn't like it, and he said, well, I would like a man to run this. And I said, okay, well, I'm gonna write that in your report, that basically you want a different analyst to run this because they're not a man. And like having that and saying that out loud to somebody, I think made them realize that we're trying to get data. Like that's the objective. Like, are you good at what you do? Can I provide you the information? Can I do it scientifically? Like, leading and thinking about that and plowing forward, saying like, we're not talking about gender, we're not talking about any of this, here's the data, and this is what I'm gonna give you because that's my job. Like, I feel being straightforward in that way kind of like presents the image as a woman that I mean what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do my job. And that's why people want to work with me or want to work with our company.
No, okay.
Next question, please.
So my question actually has a little bit to do with that one. When you're in a male-dominated field, how do you handle if a male counterpart kind of circumvents convince you in a problem-solving situation or just any kind of situation if you're kind of left out of the solution, especially if you're the manager in charge?
I feel like this probably has happened and it just went over my head what was actually happening. I just interject myself back in. Like, no, I'm in charge. That's how it's gonna be. I mean, like, it's probably happened. I just didn't register it because, like I was mentioning earlier, you know, I've gotten to the point where I'm today because I have an expertise that people recognize. So if somebody circumvents that on the basis of gender, it's kind of like, no, we're not playing that game. So I just nipped it in the bud right there.
Yeah, that is a hard question. I feel like in the experience that I've had is when I get a lot of being talked over, right? Where like you start saying something and then the person will come in and just interject. I sometimes bring it back to talking about working as a team or being social etiquette of saying like that this is not how we proceed. Everyone gets to speak, so you kind of have to call out the actions for what they are, and that sort of brings back the conversation.
You know, I can actually answer this as well. So I've been a journalist for about 35, 36 years. And early in my career, I had moved to California from Michigan, and I got this job at a major publishing firm, the biggest in California. And I was in the fashion group, so I worked at the fashion magazines, and I was 28. And I decided that I wanted to move to the automotive group because I love cars, I love muscle cars, and I knew even at that time a lot about them because I did my own tune-ups, timing change, I did a lot of stuff. So I got the job as the assistant managing editor, and every single, like 99.9% of the people were men. So, you know, I wasn't invited to the fun, cool stuff after work or in the middle of the day to go to the warehouse to see all the cool cars. They never let me drive any of them, but they realized that I did have intellect and I knew a lot about vehicles. Like, I didn't have any questions for what they wrote because I was editor, so I would just, you know, rewrite because I knew everything. I knew that, you know, foot, pound, foot, cubic, this and that, and if I didn't, then I would go to the technical editor and ask. So it took a while, but after like two years, finally it was like, oh yeah, Kristen knows this, we don't have to worry about explaining anything, blah, blah, blah. So that helped. Then getting into this industry about 11 years ago, it was sort of the same thing. I started in packaging first, and you know, my first show was Pack Expo, the 1.8 million square foot McCormick place, and it was overwhelming. And then I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna do what I do on a daily basis and just go ask questions, right? I'm just gonna ask questions, and so I think people appreciate that when you ask questions and, you know, you don't really know everything. You're not going to know everything when you're just stepping into a job, so that helped. Anything else? No other questions? We are going to have roundtable sessions here in about probably 8 minutes. If you want to stick around, we have people that will answer questions, panelists, former panelists, so we can keep those conversations going if you want to. Stick around and you can ask anybody a question without an audience. Thank you very much for attending. Have a great rest of the day.